So WACAS has given us a very comprehensive discussion about the benefits of SGLT2 inhibitors in people with type 2 diabetes, and in particular the cardiovascular benefits and the protection against decline of renal function. Now, we've recently had an announcement which has changed the whole context in which we prescribe drugs for diabetes. The announcement of the scarcity of GLP-1 agonists in the medicine supply notification. So I'm going to talk about it in the context of that. My disclosures, my only disclosures, I'm Deputy Editor of the British Journal of Diabetes, for which I receive no financial remuneration, but it's owned by the Association of British Clinical Diabetologists, which receives corporate sponsorship from Uncle Tom Cobley and all. So let's get into some of the issues arising out of the MSN notification. So we're now in a world in which for the next year, the absence of GLP-1s mean that it's more a question of what can we get than what necessarily is the best treatment for people with diabetes. This was publicised in December in the British Journal of Diabetes in an article by Cliff Bailey, who foresaw the problems which were already becoming apparent at the end of last year. What does the medicine supply notification say? Well, basically it says that supply is not expected to return to normal until mid-2024. The supply issues have been caused by an increase in demand for these products for licensed and off-label indications, and it's the case that 50% of the prescriptions are currently off-label, often for people with obesity and relatively mild degrees of obesity, who do not necessarily have any of the comorbidities that many people with diabetes have. So the recommendation is GLP-1 RAs should only be prescribed for their licensed indication, which implies that people who are having off-license usage should be taken off it. But no one should be started on a GLP-1. And for those on a GLP-1, there is a need to consider changing the regime or alternative regimes. There's a reminder in the third bullet point to support people with type 2 diabetes to access structured education and weight management programs where available. But the pressing issue for people presenting to surgeries will be, I can't get my drug, what should I do? And these may not provide an immediate solution. So it will be necessary to review the various available agents in terms of altering people's regimes. So what have we got? We've got metformin, but most people who are coming along will either be on metformin or will have been intolerant of it in the past. You can switch people to DPP-4 inhibitors. However, these will have a much more modest effect on glycemic control and will not confer the cardiovascular or renal benefits. Pioglitazone, of course, causes weight gain. So unless it's combined with an agent like an SGLT2i, which may help offset the weight gain, it's only an option for a small number of people. And that leaves you with sulfonylureas or SGLT2 inhibitors for the majority of people. And for those whose glycemic control is poor or deteriorates, they will need switching to insulin. Now, it's estimated that around 400,000 people on GLP-1 agonists nationally, of whom 100,000 are taking those alongside insulin. Of the 300,000 who are not, it's estimated that 25%, i.e. around 75,000 people with type 2 diabetes will need to start on insulin, which is a huge number over a short period of time when services are already really busy with lots of other COVID recovery stuff. We've already mentioned the need to revisit advice about diet and lifestyle, and it's worthwhile just remembering what is available. And for anyone who qualifies, the low-calorie diet program, which is now relaunched as the type 2 diabetes remission program, anybody who's eligible for that, this would be a fantastic opportunity to get them into this program, which of all the programs offers the greatest benefit to the individual with diabetes and to the whole local health economy. Then you have structured education, you have healthy living, which is the National Digital Structured Education Programme, and you have Humber in North Yorkshire, Oviva, which is currently, people can refer to that currently, up until later in the summer. Weight management. These are the services which are available for weight management. There's the NHS Weight Loss Plan app, universally available. There's a digital weight management program, which is a medium intensity digital program over 3 months. 3 levels of support included from a human coach. Community pharmacists can refer to this as well as primary care, but not specialists. Then you have the tier 3 and tier 4 weight management services. However, these services have large waiting lists. Now, I just want to comment on a couple of things that Wakas discussed in his checklist for those at low risk, moderate risk and high risk in terms of prescribing GLP-1. Firstly, I think you can be reassured to some extent about the frail and those with CKD. Dealing with the CKD, those if you're using dapagliflozin, for instance, the license for that extends right down to EGFR of 20. So that's the easiest one to use. With some of the other agents like canagliflozin, the license only extends down to 45. And I had a difficult situation recently where a patient had been stopped on a GLP-1 canagliflozin because the EGFR had fallen below 45, and if the practitioner in concern had been worried about being off license, the patient could have been switched to dapagliflozin. There's a lot of evidence emerging of the safety of SGLT2i use in patients with frailty, which is well discussed in the reference that I've given you from Mark Evans et al. There's multiple favourable effects in older adults. It's well tolerated in older adults with and without diabetes, with a low risk of serious effects, and should be considered in even in the frail. Couple of things to emphasize. Ketogenic diet, please don't start anyone who's on extreme carb restriction, because we really do see in the real world people on ketogenic diets, very low carb diets, being admitted in ketoacidosis after starting on an SGLT2. And those with rapid progression to insulin within a year, you know, they may well have, they could have slow onset type 1 diabetes, and they should definitely be avoided. This slide shows the SGLT2i indication table and shows that the license, as I mentioned, is the most permissive for dapagliflozin. And if you look at the bottom, I think I said 20. In fact, it can be initiated if EGR is greater or equal than 15. So how to start? This is Waka's slide again, and because of the current situation, I've added another group, those who, because of supply issues, cannot start or might need to start, just stop GLP-1 agonists. One thing I just wanted to emphasize, I see a number of people in clinics who've been classed as intolerant to SGLT2 inhibitors, but who have had very cursory treatment for, in the case of women, for vaginal thrush, or in men for penile thrush. There's very good guidance about effective thrush eradication treatment on this patient info site, which is referenced by NICE, and I think it's very important that recurrent thrush has been thoroughly, people have been offered thorough anti-thrush treatment before concluding that they can't take the SG2 inhibitor. And the same applies to men with penile thrush. So what about possible regimes? We've got this list of drugs available, which we've discussed. If you have to start people on insulin, it's important to be aware that there's only certain insulins where there's sufficient supplies to allow uplift. Therefore, for background insulins, Trugio, first line, second line, Abaciclar. The other insulins, including the widely prescribed Tresiba, Levemir, are no longer able to take uplift. Intermediate acting insulins, Humulin I is the only one which is able to take uplift. For mixed insulins, Humulin M3 is the one which has sufficient supplies. In the documents it mentions quick pen, that's the pre-filled pens. There's no reference to the cartridges, and I've actually tried to find out, so far unsuccessfully, as to whether the cartridges are available in sufficient supplies. So in conclusion, as Wakas has eloquently pointed out, huge savings to be made to the community with effective use of these agents in people who are at high vascular or renal risk. The economic cost of renal replacement alone is estimated at 1.23 billion, and much of that is for people with a diabetic nephropathy. So the present supply crisis represents an opportunity to get more people on regimes which will prevent that and other cardiovascular complications, and working together between primary and specialist care, I believe we can rebuild some of the bridges which may have been downed during the COVID pandemic. So that's a conclusion. Perhaps we could just have some discussion around this diagram, which is from the ABCD and PCDS document. started off by saying myself and Wackers actually feel that this is not compliant with NICE, because the first agent suggested is a sulfonylurea, and we would suggest to you that you should not do that without considering the vascular risk. Because for those with increased vascular risk, and we believe that a high proportion of those who you are considering for other agents who are coming off GLP-1s will have high vascular risk, and therefore for those people the NICE recommendation would be a SGLT inhibitor rather than a sulfonylurea.